Today I want to talk about something that I've already spoken about like several times in quite a few different pep talks, but I think it's such an important issue, and I know that's an issue that it's an issue which I struggle with a lot, and I'm sure like probably most of you do as well. I want to talk about those times as a mother when you start feeling like you're a martyr. Times in your life as a mom when you're like feeling sort of like a bit burnt out, like you sort of get into like embittered martyr mode. So how can you tell that you're like in this mode? So for myself, I know that it's like when my husband asks me like, honey, would you mind mailing a letter at the post office for me? And I do it, but I'm like, Urgh. And my 10-year-old asks me, Ema, could you make me a sandwich? And I do it, but I'm like, Urgh. And someone calls me to cook a meal for a sick neighbor, and I do it, but I'm like, Urgh. Okay? So then you know that you are in martyr mode. Then I know I'm in martyr mode. And as I said, several times in these pep talks, I think lots of times like when we get into that martyr mode, like we just think, I'm so amazing, and I'm doing so many mitzvot and helping so many people, but I'm embittered, but we think that we're doing everyone a favor. But the truth is that, as I've said many times before, it's really, really no fun to be a martyr, and it's even less fun to live with one. Okay, so when we're being martyrs, like we suffer, and our families suffer, and everyone around us suffers as well. So it's so important. It's so incredibly important. Maybe it's like almost rule number one as a mother, to learn how to take responsibility for your own happiness. How important it is, like when you're getting into that martyr mode, to figure out what you need to change in order to be happy, in order to be thriving, because it's just not acceptable. If you are embittered and you're feeling like a martyr, you owe it to yourself, and you owe it to everybody around you to do what you need to do to be happy. To look at yourself, look at your life, and figure out what you need to change. So I'm talking about this. I'm talking about this situation, about this issue this week, because I am presently, for the last few days, I've been in embittered martyr mode. So I know, like this past Friday, for example, I was getting ready for Shabbat, and I was just so stressed out and so embittered and feeling so overwhelmed and like so, and then my husband came home and I was like, he asked me to do something, because I was like in embittered martyr mode. Okay, so immediately after Shabbat, I was already thinking like, what do I need to change? It's not easy. It's not easy to do it because we moms, for whatever reason, it's just the easiest thing, I guess. It's sort of like, it's sort of like inertia. It's just like, just to stay, the easiest thing is just to stay in that mode, to stay in the embittered martyr mode. But I know, like, from years of doing this pep talk and from whatever, like, I've learned that I owe it to myself and I owe it to everyone around me to figure something out to make my life better, to help myself to feel like a happier person. So just to give you an example of what I was thinking about after Shabbat, like what I was thinking of, like the ideas that I had to make my Friday better. So I was thinking, I had the idea like to try and get almost all of my cooking done before Friday. And it's not going to be easy. It's going to require a certain amount of effort and a certain amount of organization. But I'm going to do what I can to make this Friday and every Friday, like sort of an almost enjoyable, even maybe somewhat pleasurable experience. Not like last Friday. Last Friday was a disaster. Okay? Okay. So another example in my life where I'm feeling a bit burnt out and a little bit embittered is that I have a wonderful 6-month-old daughter, Sophia Batzion. You can maybe hear her in the background with her own commentary on this pep talk. And Sophia Batzion, she is the cutest baby in the whole world. But I'm feeling at this point that I'm starting to feel like I need a little bit of a break from Sophia Batzion. I feel like a little bit like I need a little bit of space. Okay? So, and I'm just feeling, I know, oh, she's crying, she doesn't like that. But I know that I need a bit of space because I'm starting to feel like a little bit like a martyr. I know that like people asking me to do things, I need to do things, and I'm like feeling like, okay, but I feel like I'm not getting really enough space for myself. Okay? So I'm not sure what I'm going to do about this. I'm going to take her out. Here's Sophia Batzion. She didn't appreciate all that talk about getting space, so she's sitting with me now. But So I'm not sure what I'm going to do about this. I'm not sure what I'm going to do about, like, in order to get myself a little bit more space from my adorable, wonderful, yummy baby. But just an idea that I had just to give you like a sense of the kind of changes that you can make in order to sort of get yourself out of embittered martyr mode. I'm thinking maybe I'm going to try and find a babysitter who can come maybe one evening a week, and so like I can get out for like 2 hours, do something fun for myself, leave the baby behind, and we'll see. I don't know if that's it, but we'll see. Okay. So on this topic, I read something really interesting on this topic. About how to get yourself out of embittered martyr mode in a wonderful, wonderful book that I recommend very, very highly called Comfort, Healing, and Joy by Dr. David Fox. And it's really a great book. It's a great book with like sort of simple tools, like short chapters, each of which provides like a simple tool of how to be a happier person and how to lead like a more satisfying, happier life. And in one of the chapters in this book, which actually it's called, I sort of called it the little piece of chocolate and the big piece of chocolate. And actually, I reprinted this chapter on my blog last week. So if you want to read, it's called the big piece of chocolate on my blog. If you want to read the whole thing, but basically what he talks about how in life, on many occasions, like we have lots of responsibilities, and we end up taking the little piece of chocolate. What he means is, imagine that you're with a friend, and you bake, and your friend breaks a chocolate bar in half. So of course it's your friend. You're going to offer to take the small piece of chocolate, because it's not an even break. It's almost never an even break, okay? So you're going to take the little piece of chocolate. So then maybe the next day, and the next day, and the next day, it happens again and again and again, and you're taking the little piece of chocolate. But it might be that at a certain point, in the beginning, you feel like, okay, I'm being a generous person, I'm being a better person, I'm working on, all of my character traits I'm overcoming my desire, my physical desire for the chocolate, and you feel like taking the little piece of chocolate is making you into a better, stronger, greater person, okay? But it might be at a certain point, probably at a certain point, you start feeling a little bit resentful. Like, why am I always the one getting the little piece of chocolate? You start getting into embittered martyr mode. And that's the point when you need to take the big piece of chocolate. When you say to your friend, sorry, but I think today I'm going to take the big piece of chocolate. You need to do a little bit of something to feel like your needs are also being taken care of. So in our lives, most of the time, then as mothers, we're taking a little piece of chocolate. We're trying to be more patient with our children, more patient with our husband, nicer to our neighbors, harder working, and being in all ways a better person. Always working on, taking the little piece of chocolate, working harder to keep the house cleaner, working harder to give our children healthy meals, doing all the things you can, putting all this hard work, and things that are a little bit, not 100% pleasurable for ourselves. And in most cases, taking a little piece of chocolate and doing those things and working on ourselves and doing these things that are a little bit hard for us, it's great, it's fantastic. It means that you are slowly but surely building yourself into a better human being, into a better person with superior midot, with superior character traits. It's an amazing thing, and it's an amazing thing to take. Most of the time, be taking the little piece of chocolate, but at a certain point. If you start finding that your husband asks you to go and mail a letter at the post office, and you're like, "Urgh," and your child asks you for a sandwich, you're like, "Urgh," and your neighbor, you have to cook for a sick neighbor, you're like, "Urgh," then that's the point at which you need to take the big piece of chocolate. It means that you have been taking the little piece of chocolate one time too many, and that you need to do something that you find pleasurable. So maybe for one woman that means, spending some time at the gym. Maybe for another woman it means, taking herself out, going out with a friend to a cafe. For another woman it means, I know when I had little kids at home, then I would go and spend an hour a week at the library reading the weekly Torah portion. And that for me felt like my big piece of chocolate. It felt like I'm spending some time in this quiet library environment reading the parsha. I loved it. So I think for every woman, finding the thing that brings you joy, and for many of us, maybe you have to sort of remind yourself, what did used to bring me joy? What did used to make me feel like my needs were being taken care of? before I started taking a little piece of chocolate all the time. And just a side note, like, for very, very holy people, like people who are, like women who are very, very, very holy, tzedikot, then it might be that for them, then taking the little piece of chocolate is actually, that there's really no difference between the little piece of chocolate and the big piece of chocolate, because they love it. Like, they love, always being generous and always being patient and always, always doing the right thing. With it. So they don't really have to ever do go to the spa for a day, because they get so much pleasure just from doing mitzvot and doing good deeds, But for most of us, regular human beings, regular Jewish moms, that we need to find the right balance between, the working on ourselves and bringing ourselves pleasure and giving ourselves a big piece of chocolate at times. Okay? So I just want to bless all of us that we should find the correct balance between taking the little piece of chocolate and taking the big piece of chocolate, and that through doing this, that we should be able to really thrive and be the happiest possible mothers for our children.